Hey, so in the last video we have seen how we can declare a function. Now let's get started with how we can define a function. Function declaration just tell the compiler that how our function is going to look. It just gives the compiler very high level idea about the function. So you can see what it tells to the compiler. It tells to the compiler what is going to be its return type or what type of value it is going to return, what is the name of the function, and how many and what different type of input it is going to take. So declaration is just for the compiler. We just tell to the compiler that we are creating a function which is going to be of, let's say, name add, and it's going to return value of integer type, and it's going to take two inputs of integer type. So this is use of declaration. We just declare the function to the compiler that we are creating such kind of function. Now the next step is to define a function. So in function definition, what we do is we write the actual logic of the function. We write the actual body of the function. Okay, so in the function definition, we are going to write the code about the function or what exactly that function is gonna do. Let's get started. Let's see what is the syntax of function declaration. So it's very similar to function declaration. Okay, so you have to write return type, then you have to write name of function, then you have type list, right? You have list of different types of your input. So let's take example of this add function. So here what you have to write, you have to write name list of your inputs. So let me write it over here, name list of inputs. In case of declaration, we write type list of the inputs. In case of definition, we write name list of the inputs. I'm going to explain you what exactly we mean by name list of the input. So let's see this syntax by an example of the add function. Okay, so let's see how we can define the add function. So what is its return type? Its return type is going to be same, that is int. Okay, what is its name? Its name is again going to be same, that is add. Now here we need to write name list of the inputs. Okay, so what name list exactly means? Let's say the first input that is going to come to this function, let's say I want to store it in a variable called as number1. Okay, so I'm going to write something like this. Then the second input I want to store it in, let's say, variable called as number2. So I'm going to write something like this, and this thing is called as input name list, because here we are supplying name of a variable along with its data type. Okay, so this is input name list. So in case of input name list, you give variable names along with the data type, and the input that is going to come to your function is going to be stored in these variables. Okay, so we are going to see how we can actually call a function and how we can pass input to that function. So we are going to see that, but right now just remember, you have an input name list, and in that input name list you define multiple variables, and each and every variable will get or will receive inputs whenever user will actually start using that function. Okay, so we are going to see that as we will proceed ahead in this module. Now this input name list is also called as parameters. So it is also called as parameters of the function, or it is also called as formal parameters of the function. Okay, so this input name list is basically called as parameters. Then after writing return type, name of the function, and input name list, you have to write function body. Now the function body needs to be a compound statement. So in function body you need to compulsory write a compound statement. So you need to write curly brace open curly brace close, and in that you can write anything you want to do in that function. So let's say in this add function, I want to do addition of the two inputs that I am getting, and I want to return the addition of these two inputs as the output. So what I will do, first let's calculate addition of these two numbers. So let me write int sum is equal to number1 plus number2. So now in the sum variable, I will have addition of number1 and number2. Now what I want to do, I want to give this sum, whatever sum is present in the sum variable, as the output of this function. So I want to return this output. So for that there is a statement called as return statement in C++. So whatever you have to return, you will use return statement. And in this case, I want to return sum. So I'll write return sum followed by semicolon. It's very easy, right? What we are doing, we are getting two inputs, that is number 1 and number 2. Both are of type integer. Then we are taking sum of them and we are storing that sum in the sum variable, which is again of integer type, because number 1 and number 2 addition is going to be of integer type. And finally, we are giving this sum as the output of the function. So how we give output of the function? We use return statement. So return statement in C++ is basically used to give some output or to return some value from the function. So I'm again repeating this line. Return statement in C++ is used to return some output or to return some value from the function, and the value it is going to return from the function, its type should always match with the return type of your function. So in this case, we are returning value which is present in the sum variable, and the sum variable has the type as integer, and that's why it is allowed by the compiler, because we are returning value of integer type, and here return type of function is also integer. So that's why everything is going good. Okay, so we are using return statement to return a value from the function, and whatever value we are returning, the type of that value should match our return type of the function. Okay, so cool. I hope you are very clear with how we can define a function. It's very easy. Let's see how we can define the second function that we have declared over here. Okay, so let's write a return type of the function, that is float. Then name of the function. So name of the function is going to remain same, that is add 3 floats. Now you may have this doubt, if we are defining the function, then actually what is the use of this declaration? So I'm going to talk on that in later videos of this module, but right now just remember, you first have to declare a function and then you have to define it, right? So name of the function is add 3 floats, and let's write input name list. So let's say float number 1, then float number 2, then float number 3. This is my input name list. Now in this function body, what we are going to do, we have to again calculate their sum. So I am going to write float sum is equal to number 1 plus number 2 plus number 3. So I will get sum of these 3 variables, and then what I will do, just I will write a return sum. Cool. So here this function, what it will do, it will calculate sum of the inputs that we are providing to that function, and it will store it in some variable, and we are returning the sum variable. Now data type of the sum variable is float and return type is also float. So again, this rule you have to keep in your mind. Whatever value you are returning, its data type should match with your return type. Or in another way, I will say, whatever you want to return, that type should be present over here, or that should be the return type of your function. Okay, now instead of writing this line, you can directly write something like this as well. So you don't need to create an variable and then return that variable. You can directly return number 1 plus number 2 plus number 3, or number 1 plus number 2 in the add case. So this is also perfectly fine. Okay, cool. So I hope you have understood how we are defining these two functions. Now even if you have any doubts related to this, we are going to see multiple programs on the function, and in those programs I'm going to clear all your doubts. Okay, so even if you are thinking that you have some doubts in your mind, don't worry at all, because in programming video of this module we are going to discuss all different scenario. What will happen if we don't write this declaration? Will compiler throw an error, or will compiler accept it? Why exactly we need this declaration? So all these doubts we are going to cover in the programming video, so don't worry. Now you may also have this doubt that where exactly in the file we should write this declaration and definition, because we usually write hash include iostream, and then we write using namespace std, and then we used to write int main. So whatever code we are writing right now, what should be the position in the file that we create, what should be the position of this code. So we are also going to discuss on that, so don't worry at all. Right now we are just discussing about the syntax. So right now we are just concerned about how to define a function, how to declare a function, that's all. We are not right now dealing with how to put these functions in use, how to actually make use of them. So right now we are not worried about that. Okay, so let's see how we can define the third function. So let's get started. So its return type is void, its name is println. Now it's not going to take any input, so that's why in brackets you are not going to supply any input name list, because there are no inputs to this function. Then you have to write curly brace open close as the body of this function. Now what this function is going to do, as we have defined over here, it is just going to print hello world on the screen. So in this function I'm just going to write cout hello world followed by /n, and that's it. It's not going to do anything else, but it is just going to print hello world on the screen. And that's the reason you don't need to write any return statement in this. So if you write return something, like let's say if you write return 0, then that is going to be an error, because return type of this function is void. That means this function is not going to return anything, or it is not going to give any output. But here we are writing return statement, right? So what is wrong in our spelling? RETURN. Here we are writing return statement. So compiler, what it is going to say, compiler, it is going to say return value type does not match with the function type. Okay, so it is basically saying, you are saying that the function is not going to return anything, and actually you are returning something, so it's not allowed. So that's why writing return statement is not allowed. The another error that we are getting over here is in cout. So it is saying cout is not defined. So we already have this knowledge. To use cout, we need to include header file, that is iostream, and we also need to use namespace. So we need to write using namespace std. Now this error will go away. Okay, so in this way we can define the third function, that is println. Always remember, whenever you write return type of the function as void, in that case you cannot write return statement in the function body, because writing return statement is going to be invalid, as that function is not going to return anything, and which is indicated by this return type. So I hope you are very clear with the concept of how we can define a function. You are clear with the syntax of defining a function. So see you in the next video, where we are going to discuss about how we can actually call the function, how we can make use of the function that we have created so far.